Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. I am going to give everyone a few minutes to start joining. While we're doing that, I will quickly introduce everyone here. First and foremost, we have myself and Bo from the Acelab team. Bo's going to be in the background today supporting, and then we have Micah and Alan from HushFrame who will be hosting the webinar and walking us through everything. I'll let them give a more in-depth introduction in just a moment. Let's see here, but first and foremost, I'm going to share my screen and do a quick little intro into Acelab and show you exactly where you can find more information about HushFrame on our website. So here we're at our home screen. This is the first page you'll see when you're logged in. Right here, you can type in HushFrame and we can toggle over to their brand page. Once you are here, you'll see some more information about HushFrame, some contact information, some few value highlights here, some video installation footage, and of course, we've got their products, which you can click into each one of these here. If you're interested in learning more about anything, you're also welcome to save anything to your firm library if you'd like. Definitely encourage you to check all this out after today's webinar. And we also have some inspiration pictures here at the bottom. So yeah, I will drop this link in our chat at the moment so you can check this out when you get the chance. A few other things to go over before we get started is I want to remind everyone that we have our Q&A that's living here at the bottom. You can click this button here at the bottom, Q&A, drop any questions at any time during the webinar, and towards the end we will go through those questions to you guys. We also have a poll that you'll see during the webinar as well. Feel free to fill that, and we'll have a post-webinar survey for you as well. So that's everything. Oh, that's everything from my end. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mike and Alan to get us started.
Everybody, we're excited to present our second webinar and to bring HushFrame into your architect firms without being physically present there. I'm Micah. I'm the CEO of HushFrame, and with me today is Alan Case, the inventor.
Hello, everybody.
And today we're going over UL fire ratings for acoustic floor ceiling assemblies, fact and fiction. And we're going to kind of just take a deep dive into what it took to actually obtain the UL for the HushFrame RAF connector product. And then we're going to just kind of step you through why exactly HushFrame is the choice when it comes to UL assemblies and floor ceiling. Alan, anything to share before we start?
No, I think that it's the important point to make is that everybody knows they need UL, at least a 1 hour rating, typically in a floor ceiling and multifamily, but it doesn't necessarily run in concert with acoustic ratings. And so we're going to show the differentiation between our product, acoustic performance in the UL situation versus some competitor stuff that just falls way short.
All right, so let me share my screen and then we'll get started. All right, so let me just move this out the way. So here we have a little bit of fact versus fiction. In this presentation, we're going to share, as I just mentioned, our HushFrame technology and a floor ceiling assembly, our testing methodology, and how we performed at UL. And as Alan mentioned, one of the bonus features of obtaining UL fire rating is that we also have the added benefit of being acoustically superior to a lot of what we call legacy products, so the products that are currently being used, things like Resilient Channel and some of the other clips, Genie clips, things like that. So there are some fact versus fictions when it comes to UL and fire rating. And Alan, you want to just talk a little bit about that?
It's just that what we'll show you is that the representation in the marketing materials from the metal channel product companies. They show a specific STC or IIC rating for installation, but those ratings that they publish don't necessarily comport with the installation requirements of a UL assembly that meets fire code. And so there's a real disconnect there. And what we tend to do is show our product in field testing application once it's been installed and then tested acoustically in an approved UL assembly to show the difference in performance.
All right, so let's begin. So we went through an intense testing process in order to get our 1 hour fire rating for our product for a HushFrame connector. It cost us a pretty penny, nearly $100,000 per test. One of the things that we had to do was oversee the build of a finished 14 by 20 assembly. And they installed that in a massive steel and concrete frame. And Alan, he'll just walk us, before we see the video of this, Alan, you want to just walk us through some of the process of what happens after that assembly was built?
Well, once the assembly is built in place, and it's built by the engineers at UL, so it's extremely precise. Every screw is within 1/8 of an inch of where it's specified and so forth. Once it's finished in the frame, then it's lifted with a gantry crane and flown over and set down on top of a furnace, an open top furnace, where the test will actually be conducted. It's sealed in place. The furnaces are filled with thermocouples. The test assembly is filled with thermocouples.
Oops, sorry.
That's not a problem. That's the frame actually sitting over the furnace in that picture. And there's a shot of the gantry lifting it.
All right. And so make sure we finish with this one. And then this is just right here. As you can see, this is our being lowered over. This is it being lowered over the furnace, correct, Alan?
That is correct. That's setting over the top of the oven. Yep.
All right. So now
Well,
what's happening? Go ahead.
Take me back for a second, Micah.
Sure.
So what the blue box is showing us is that once the assembly is set on top of the furnace, and the build is finished with the subfloor, whatever you've chosen, your trusses and your finished sealing membranes. Once it's set in place on the furnace and being sealed, at that point the UL engineers will load the top of the assembly with large steel hoppers, and they'll add water to them to whatever level is required to meet the maximum loading that we're requesting our assembly be tested for. So in this particular situation, I requested that we load the hoppers to the maximum failure rate, to the point of failure of the manufacturer, the truss manufacturer's specification for both live and dead load, which kind of raised an eyebrow. But the point when you're testing it at UL, you want to test as least restrictive as possible, so that the developer or the builder going forward, after you've got the assembly approval, that they can do whatever they want with it, because you've given them such an open book with very, very unrestricted construction. So they'll set thermocouples across the surface of the floor in a number of places, and the way the test functions is the assembly has to survive 60 minutes, full minutes, at 1700 degrees of open flame. And the way it would fail is that if any point on the top of the floor surface reached a temperature of 250 degrees Fahrenheit over ambient, that would shut down the test and you would fail. Or if there's a deflection in the structural components that would indicate imminent failure or collapse, that would cause a failure of the test. And that's measured with transducers that are set across the top. And the point of those is that the fireman is going to be sitting on top of or standing on top of that assembly, and they want to be sure that that they'll be safe for at least that 60 minutes.
So here we are. The engineers are monitoring the surface temperature and the assembly just to see how it's performing, and we have a video of that here.
Yep, and each one of those blocks is showing you temperature readout from
Climbing
a
in that
thermal
corner,
printer.
of course.
Yeah.
So obviously HushFrame survived. Now we're going to talk about what happens once an assembly has survived the UL fire chamber. You have to meet obviously the 60 minutes. And then of course they issue a design number, which is published in a very specific description of the build as well. And here you are, Alan. Is that one of the engineers there?
Yes, it is, and they'll also produce what is called a surface rating, and that is the number of minutes that the assembly is in the furnace under fire when the bottom membrane of the ceiling first starts to open up to allow the flame inside the assembly into the core of the assembly. And so you'll see the result of our service rating as we move on.
So here, this is the inside of that fire chamber.
Yep,
Obviously,
that shows you. Those show you thermocouples that are on ceramic stands that are sitting underneath the panel, watching for deflection and fire breakout.
And so, obviously, you architects are going to rely on the UL design, and the goal is to be as conservative as possible. Alan, you want to talk about what we were looking for, of course, in our build specifically?
Well, we wanted the least restrictive build you can have, and so the minimum truss depth was 12 inches. So we built with that. We set those at 24 inches on center. Then we added the HushFrame connectors on a 24 by 48 inch pattern. So the furring strips that we used underneath were 24 inches apart, and the HushFrame was scattered every 48 inches along every other truss. The finished floor that we use, we simply topped the assembly with a 3/4 inch subfloor panel. We didn't add any finish whatsoever on top of that, so that it would be the maximum exposure. And we just used 3.5 inches of fiberglass, unfaced fiberglass bat that was stapled up underneath the subfloor to keep the heat inside the center and maximize the heat on the HushFrame blocks to prove their efficacy. This first test that we performed there was done with a metal hat channel because UL didn't believe that a wood truss or wood furring system would survive the chamber. They were expecting an early collapse, and so they put me through a few hoops before they would run it. So we did the first test with metal hat channel, and obviously we survived that, and we came through with a UL design for that. We returned a year later and tested again, only with wood furring this time, and way outperformed the metal hat channel with the wood furring test.
The interesting thing is that Alan, we get more than a few questions about the silicone core. Obviously, the greatest concern from people who ask about the pure silicone core of HushFrame is the pure silicone core strong enough to combat shear, to combat fire, and the engineers at UL also believe that the pure silicone core of the connector would melt. They were really in disbelief.
Well, and silicone doesn't melt. It's not what happens. And it turns out that the combustion temperature of wood is just under 400 degrees, and that's a normal operating temperature for the silicone. So it doesn't care about that. In the open flame, as you'll see when we get into a later photo, after the burn, when they opened up the chamber, the HushFrame not only survived the burn, but it could maintain the control of the furring in place when all the insulation had burnt out and all the drywall was gone and it was burning into the trusses in the subfloor. The HushFrame remained on the job.
And in fact, they thought they were kind of anticipating the failure. They really were afraid, so they ended up chain fastening the water tubs for the load to prevent them from going into the furnace.
Yeah, they thought it would collapse inside and tumble in. You can see in that little photo there that the chain frame, and there's a couple of the tubs being set before they have water. And you can see on the ground the tape spots where those are thermocouples and transducers that are being protected
So,
on top of the assembly.
how much did those water tubs weigh, or what was the total weight? Do you remember?
I don't recall the total load. I guess we probably tested it at 100 and maybe 140 pounds a square foot or 150.
Right.
Whatever the max crust dead live was from the manufacturer is what we put on it.
That's right. So, so then they fired up the furnace with all the load on there, and then, you know, the game was on. So here in this video, what you'll see is, actually after the flame was extinguished, they went to go check out the assembly.
Oh, you want to watch it from below, huh? You get a better view of that. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, you want to watch it from below, huh? You get a better view of that. Yeah. Thank you. That's your burden. You're going to be seeing a lot of me now.
All right, so that's enough of that chat in there, Alan. So what did you discover after the burn?
Well, so a quick comment is that somehow that video has been compressed. These weren't actually performed by hobbits. These are actually full-grown men. But what they discovered was, as I said, this first test was with the metal hat channel, that the hat channel was still entirely in place, secured by the HushFrame on the charred trusses. And this particular assembly had a surface rating of 42 minutes. And the 60-minute fire. So when we went to wood furring, we ended up with a much greater surface rating.
So fire test 2.
Yep.
And the wood furring actually held up to the challenge, and that was obviously unexpected by the engineers at UL.
By everyone actually, because you would assume that if the fire is going to get in there, but so it turns out, as we learned, this obtained a surface rating of 64 minutes, which means the first sheet of gypsum board on the bottom of the membrane didn't even start to open until the 1-hour test was over. So right there, you gain a 60-minute rating on the assembly surface without any consideration of the truss or a joist construction behind it. So the surface carries the UL approval. But what we learned was the wood furring stays resolute in place under the assault of the heat from that vast superior heat. But what we learned was that all the metal channels, what happens is they start to twist when they heat up. They start to twist, and they're pulling the screws and tugging at the screws that are holding the drywall up, and that's what causes a premature opening. And you'll see later that the RC and the metal channels that are installed with the metal clip systems run a 20 to 25 inch surface rating, 25 minutes, excuse me, surface rating is against our 64. So from a pure fire perspective, you really got to think about what you're putting in your ceiling.
Yeah, and that's, it's ironically, well, I guess maybe unironically, because everyone was surprised. When we speak to architects and builders, we often hear the same air of surprise when we talk about a 1-hour fire rating for wood furring. but obviously we have the results to match that. And including with the 1 hour fire rating, we also have the acoustic capabilities of HushFrame. So it really is a dual threat. So let's talk about a case of apples and oranges. Um, and you want to take us through this, Alan?
Yeah, so we test it in the acoustic laboratory. We did this testing for this product at Riverbank in Chicago, and they're highly regarded. We test the same assemblies construction in the Riverbank lab that we constructed in the fire chamber at UL, so that you've got apples to apples. The difference between us and the competing products with the metal stuff is their tests that they're publishing in their marketing material from the acoustic laboratory does not reflect the requirement of the constellation of installation in the UL code. So, for instance, you'll see RC shown at 24 inches on center or 16 inches on center, but actually, if you have any insulation in your ceiling whatsoever with RC, you've got to put it on 12 inches on center, and it has to be fastened. Same with the genie clips and the other clips. Once you have insulation material inside there that makes any contact whatsoever with either the membrane or is larger than 3 inches, which would have to be for an acoustic assembly, you have to put a clip every 12 inches along the length of the trusses, and you have to attach one to every truss in sequence. So, whereas a system where you'd have a HushFrame, you may have 40 or 50 connectors in the ceiling. With these genie clips and some of this other product, you would have up to 200. So, I mean, and then once you've done that, not only have you spent a lot of money and put a lot of metal in that ceiling, no one has produced or published an acoustic assembly test with that constellation of metal in the ceiling. So it's not going to achieve great performance. And then also with those systems, you're required to put something on top of the subfloor, typically a layer of gypcrete to keep the heat from penetrating through and the ultimate collapse. And so they have complicated construction and very expensive construction, and super underperforms us both from a perspective of the integrity of the system and the acoustic performance.
So if you have a budget conscious client, and I don't know who doesn't have a budget conscious client who's building,
that's for sure, yeah,
multi-families or any other type of construction, then certainly HushFrame would stand to save your client hundreds of thousands, if not more in materials cost, just by eliminating things like the cementous topping or other base materials. So in summary, we just want to to caution you to check the fine print of what you're using for the UL materials that you're speccing into your products. Obviously, that includes the acoustic or what we call legacy products that are currently being used in our ubiquitous, like resilient channel, and just ensure that and verify that the installation for soundproofing products conform with the UL design, because it may not. We have found in our research a lot of exaggerations in materials that are out there right now. And then, of course, we want to invite you to consider using HushFrame, which has both acoustic laboratory and UL fire resistance testing designs that can accomplish, frankly, dual purpose with much fewer material input into assemblies than perhaps the assemblies that you're building with right now. We encourage you to be innovative, push yourself, and ask us any questions, because you might find that HushFrame is a much better fit for your client's project than what you're using at the moment.
Indeed.
All right. So I'm not sure if we have any questions.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm back. All right. We do have a couple questions coming in the chat. I do want to encourage anyone else, if you have anything at this time, go ahead and drop it in that Q&A. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen there. All righty. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading through some of these. All right. So let me pick one. Okay. What is the maximum load capacity of each connector, and how does this affect the structural design of assemblies, particularly in multi-story applications?
So we recommend that you don't load them more than 50 pounds on a connector. So we generally, on 16-inch framing spacing, we recommend that you install them on a 24-inch by 32 grid, which really loads them up to about 35 pounds max. And that will easily handle 2 layers of 5/8 gypsum and then, the insulation materials. And it's actually beneficial because it lightens the load. Not having to use gypcrete on top lightens the load, and therefore the truss specification can be simpler and less expensive as well.
Good to know. Right. And I have a couple folks asking what your typical lead time is.
We keep a pretty large inventory, so we generally ship within 48 hours.
Okay, great. Awesome. And all right, I've got one more here. So for renovation projects, can HushFrame connectors be retrofitted into existing construction, or are they primarily for new builds?
No, they're very, very successful in retrofit. The requirement is simply that you have to remove the gypsum surface. They've got to go behind the drywall, so they've got to attach to the structural frame, either either in the wall or floor ceiling. And then once you've got it opened up, yeah, they do beautifully in retrofit. We're doing quite a bit of stuff in California. We've done a lot of stuff in Florida, with projects that have been retrofitting after destruction from destructive weather events. Condo owners are coming and saying, well, now that we have to fix this building, let's get rid of the noise. And so they pull us in because we work with wood furring and it's a carpenter friendly product. We've been very, very successful in that market.
Yeah, approximately about 40% of our sales are retrofit.
Yeah, it's with all these projects storms that are coming and going, it will most likely will grow.
Perfect. I have another question that just came in as well.
Okay.
I'm assuming, I think this person wants to see where you have your UL listings on your website.
Right on the homepage. If you go to HushFrame.com, the third thing you'll see is our UL listings. And they are in order. The whole catalog is right there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm going to quickly share my screen too, again, for anybody that missed it, on Acelab's page where you can find HushFrame. Let's go ahead and pull this up again. You'll want to make sure you have it toggled to brands here. That's important. And again, any additional information on products, contact information, all of that great stuff can be found here on Acelab's or HushFrame's Acelab page. And so I definitely encourage you to check this out when you have a second. I have dropped a link in the chat. I can go ahead and drop it again if anybody missed it. Yeah, we've got some great inspiration photos down here on the bottom too. So definitely check that out when you get a second. And let's see, I guess if there's no more questions coming in, I think we're all set then.
Thanks, Kayla.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kayla, Bo. Thank you all for attending. We appreciate come to the
Taking the
presentation. And if you need anything, you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Please do, yeah.
Amazing. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.